Welcome, witches, to the Radiance Unleashed and Unapologetic podcast, your permission slip to embody your primal, raw, unapologetic nature around who you are as an empress, queen, a witch, and a medicine woman creatrix. My name is Saber. I am an esoteric global business mentor supporting women all around the world to align with their cyclical nature and how they're doing, being, and receiving in life and legacy. If you love what you receive in these transmissions in this show, please make sure to follow and leave a review. Make sure you share with a fellow witch and a sister. I am so honored that you're here to receive, enjoy, and blessings on your journey.
You can't be tamed. Silence underneath your flame. Cut the cords around me as I speak your name. It's never gonna be the same. Even though I loved you, it was all in vain. And now I gotta break away. Put me in the water, tell me I'm renamed. Higher self-reclaim.
Welcome, 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 witches, to Radiance Unleashed and Unapologetic. Oh, today is going to be a really juicy, shadowy, powerful, potent conversation. I'm really honored to have my first guest outside of our shared economy income model. Like normally I bring on all these women that I'm normally collaborating with. I put a post out and I said, I'm looking for women who have a powerful message around sex, money, and magic. And this woman stood out to me because she kind of checked all the boxes and way more. I'm really excited to dive into this really powerful conversation. We're going to be talking about things all around what the life of a dominatrix has in store for a woman looking to explore the areas and eros of her power. We're going to be exploring the realm of psychedelics and probably the realm of things that we just don't even know at this point. So I'm going to introduce you without further ado. We have Marian Bacall. She is the CEO and founder of Thriver Lifestyle, a global coaching and consulting brand devoted to helping visionary women and organizations holistically thrive from the inside out. As an embodied leadership coach, ceremonialist, and TEDx speaker, Marian guides powerhouse women to release burnout and reclaim their sensuality, sovereignty, and sacred power through deep nervous system recalibration and somatic healing. After a profound near-death experience that catalyzed her spiritual awakening, Marian transformed from surviving in silence to thriving in truth. Today, she helps her clients deepen their embodied leadership by reconnecting them with the wisdom of their bodies and the ancestral magic woven into their bloodlines. Her work bridges modern neuroscience with ancient practices, empowering women to regulate their nervous systems, awaken their intuitive gifts, and lead from a place of wholeness and soul. She hosts transformative retreats and immersive experiences across the US and internationally. Her clients include thought leaders, creatives, and conscious CEOs ready to speak their truth, embody their power, and create impact with integrity. Her work has been featured in Vice, Business Insider, CBS, Thrive Global, and more. So without further ado, thank you so much for being on the show, love. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thank you. I always find it so interesting, right? When we read our bio to like encapsulate all of the parts of us, and it's an honor to be here. And I love that we get to share this space and really talk anything and everything unapologetically.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, own that. Own your bio, everything that you've done. It comes from deep resilience and deep shadow that you've really worked through. And I feel like I'm going to use that word a lot because I feel like You already brought this up. She said she loved my serpent necklace. And we talked about how the serpent represents shadow and transformation and protection. And one of the things I honestly would just love to just dive right into because I'm really curious about is let's just dive into sharing with the listeners your story. And I'd love to know a little bit more about your near-death experience too, and how that's really brought you from the depths of your shadow to really bring you to where you're at today.
Yeah. You know, I've said this, well, now after years of deep healing, shadow work, all that, that my overdose and near-death experience was literally the best thing that happened to me because it completely shifted the trajectory of my life and shook me up. I always say like I'm a little bit stubborn, and the universe prior to that was giving so many messages and nudges, like things got to change. And me being like, no, just power through it. I literally was like, all right, you're going to pretty much die. So that to me is the greatest gift because anytime something comes up that's like challenging, I always think, I know what's on the other side. The worst fear, right, that everyone fears is death because it's the unknown. I've died and I've been on the other side where I know that it's complete like bliss, what you want for nothing. Like I've been there. So I'm like, oh yeah, duh, forgot that. All right, let's go do it. Like it snaps me right back into, I chose to come back. So a little bit of the backstory is in 2014, so this is kind of like this is like where the big shift happens. I've always been pretty audacious and out there, but I was doing it very unconsciously. So I had a lot of unhealed trauma, eldest daughter of Asian immigrants. And so it was like, everyone hears of a tiger dragon mom. That was my mom times 100. And yeah, lots of trauma, but still overachiever, top of class by around that time. I think I was 27. 28, I was a marketing director for a company, a really international grocery chain. I had a side business where I was doing food writing, and I was in LA because I grew up there, TV, books, like on paper, on everything else. So, like my career was thriving, and I loved it. I love that part of my career. But the reason why I stayed so busy was because I could not be still. Every time I was still, now I know the name for it, my CPTSD would come up. I went through a lot of childhood sexual abuse from my father, trauma, just lots of things. But I was always taught, you just push that down, you put a face on, and you move on, So I had this double life, literally double life. Excelled, right? All these things. But I had to, in order to numb all the things that would come up, I would overwork, I would overwork out, and I would work hard, play harder, the hardest, and so I would party, I would drink, but I prided myself in still being able to perform too. And that was like this badge of honor. And I remember this vividly, April 2014, just life kept hitting me. And my niece and nephew, who were 6 and 8 months old, babies, passed away within a week from each other.
Wow.
And that was a huge blow to my family, to me. And it just made me start questioning things. And it brought up things, right, that I didn't want to address. And so that night, I just remember being like, what's the point? And people always ask, what made you OD? It was a cocktail of so many things. And I remember the out-of-body experience was I saw myself, and it showed me, universe, goddess showed me. I actually went to my funeral. I saw myself there. Like I saw what would have happened before I went back up to source. Like it just, they say life flat. I saw it all. And I truly believe in another timeline, that's what happened. And I chose to come back where when I came back, it was right before they called the ambulance, and I like went back into my body. And that experience was like huge.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, what the fuck just happened? What was that? I went down a rabbit hole, and I was like, I need to leave LA. Like, I knew my body was finally telling me, like, get out, because I would go back into that cycle. Things were too good, right? Oftentimes we don't want to leave good for extraordinary. You know,
Mm.
theme has kept coming up in my life to, help me dive deeper into living just magic and extraordinary. And I bought a one-way ticket, moved to Miami, and away from my family, friends, all that. That's when I started doing a lot of deep inner work, working with psychedelics, plant medicines, really got deep into breath work, meditation, got certified in that, like all the things that I had pushed down. And was a journey for years. I mean, I'm still on this journey. And it really brought me back to body-based wisdom. Because I think when we first go into spirituality, it's like, leave your body, ascend. So I was like lucid dreaming, astral traveling. I was like doing all the things, right? That like, which is amazing, magical. But it came back to like, you're still disassociating, because that was what I did with trauma. The most spiritual thing you can do is come back into the body, like feel it all, do it. And like, that's really when it all clicked for me, and everything just shifted even more and deeper. And that shedding, like, the snake was to come back. And that's really what my work has drawn to. It's like, actually go back to the body. The body has the wisdom, but the body has all the answers. Our nervous system, like we've been taught by everything around us to disassociate, to numb. And it's to just go back in and to like honor the divinity in our humanity. So that's in short kind of the story of that.
Wow, that is so powerful. I see so much of myself in your journey that is, I'm like, I haven't had a near-death experience, but I know for people who have, they all say the same thing, that it gave them this really big wake-up call where they were ready to choose life. And hmm, something that really stood out to me that you said was what did you call it? CPSD? CPTS?
Yeah.
What is it?
PTSD,
CP.
complex trauma.
Yeah, okay, complex trauma post-traumatic stress syndrome, basically. How
Mhm.
did you, I'd love to know this because I feel I'm very much still on this journey. Like, I mean, we all are still on our journeys, right? I've done a lot of work with it, but I do feel that it is still so challenging for me to sit still. And, a lot of my ambition, a lot of my drive, a lot of my fire, it has served me. But I know that where it's come from was to protect something that I don't need to protect anymore, you know? And breath work to me, it's like one of those things that I resist like the plague. Someone said they're like, if I did a breath work class for people who hated breath work, would you come? I'm like, probably not. Even still, it doesn't mean that I don't do it sometimes, but it's just, I recognize that part of me, there's still a really big part of me that really yearns for that. I know so many of the listeners, they feel that. I mean, even with alcohol and drugs and things like this, like I separated myself from like a really dark usage and abuse experience long ago. But like alcohol, it's so present in our society, and I think sometimes like, oh, maybe I could just have one drink and, it's with my mentors or with these people or whatever. And I still find this pattern that I actually don't feel I can regularly have alcohol in my life. I don't think I'll ever say never, but at this time, there's something in me somatically that needs to actually be discharged and be let go so I can like not go into this pattern that seems to come up anytime alcohol comes into play. So I guess the question I have for you is how did you really bridge that gap if you had so much disassociation from your body? So many people have resistances like me to things like breath work and things like this. How did you really bridge that gap to really feel anchored and embodied in that path?
Yeah, well, it's a journey, right? I didn't first dive into the body work, nervous system regulation, embodiment. I think I went through what was available, so plant medicine, psychedelics, like I'm all for it. But what really was, and it kind of like built on top of each other, right? As well as like went deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And how that happened was, even though I was meditating for a long time, I went on several journeys. The message that kept coming up was like, come back home to the body, come back. That was like the last thing, right? Come back home to the body. And it's really such this metaphor of really Mother Earth, the goddess, like it's within us. And I've been there. I was with you about like I did meditation and conscious breathing, like breath work, but the breath work I do now is different from a lot of breath work that's taught because it's more somatic movement breath work. So a lot of breath work is like you kind of stay still or you lay down. This is with movement and somatic release.
I love that.
So it's slightly different. And it's more in tune with movement is really, I truly believe women need more movement because that's our cycles. A lot of what is taught out there is still more masculine driven, like remove the ego, right? Like move away, which I think a lot of men need to because they're already used to like being grounded and embodied. The opposite is for women, right? Usually the healing, the wounding is men think they're not enough and women think they're too much, right? And so the coming back to the body is owning that muchness. So it was a process. And I think that was when I finally was like, all right. And going back to movement, dancing, breathing, really just like letting that go. That's when it started really like, okay, it was a different kind of breath work because I did all that. I'm like, that's great. But it was the movement, the somatic, this is like the sensuality part. This is the release. That's what like, oh, okay. Because it reminded me of the times when I was younger and I felt the most free. And I've said this story and it's a little bit controversial, how raving and ecstasy saved my life. So I started doing at 14. So I had gone through a lot of, I was trauma from my father. And I discovered, I was led to a rave and all of that and dancing at 14. And it actually helped me because that was my escape. And when I would dance for hours, sweating, pouring, like really, now I know it was somatic release, right? And now there's research that says like, DMT and how that helps. I'm not like telling people to just like drop ecstasy. I'm just sharing like my like what truly like happened. I felt like that gave me a window to like just being in the body when I was so used to disassociating in my teenage years because I was still going through a lot of sexual abuse. That was the only time I dropped back in, felt the floor, dancing. And so I went back to that because as I, went older, I stopped doing it because you're supposed to be professional, don't like dance as much or let yourself go. And I realized the breath work with the movement, the somatic, the sensuality, that was like the missing piece. Yeah.
That's juicy.
Like just sitting or standing or laying down, it's very serpentine. It's very like, and that's actually the visualization that I have my clients when I do talks and when I lead people is this like serpentine energy.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful that you say that because in my yoni massages that I receive, he told me, he was like, you need to move. Like if I just stay there and stay stagnant, the energy doesn't move and it gets kind of locked up and I shut down and I disassociate. But he was like, he kept encouraging, he was like dance on the table. And I was like, dance on the table. But it's like, because that was the thing that was going through my head. It's like if it's going to be too much. But when I really allowed myself, I could feel the energy actually moving. And he told me, he's like, not everybody has to move it, but then it's interesting that you say this for women that, yeah, we're cyclical. Our language is circle, right? And it's when I start just moving and just really allowing myself to feel that, oh my God, it was insane how much more energy was actually unlocking in me. And I completely resonate with you about how ecstasy and raving saved your life. I wasn't 14, I was about 18, 19. But, all of these psychedelics and things like this, they're so stigmatized, right? And I'm so grateful for things like MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Sciences, that are doing like the clinical studies to help people really experience these substances where they know that they're clean, they know that they're in a safe place, in a protected, supervised environment, and things like this. But, I haven't experienced it clinically, but what I have experienced is actually I've used my discernment in it, especially now that it's been over 10 years, where I use my discernment whenever I do choose to partake. But to me, I don't know, there's some people that say, "Oh, I don't need ayahuasca or I don't need plant medicines. Like I am this," and I understand that. However, there's just so much access, especially for those of us who maybe we don't even realize we have things shut down, right? And you open up these realms with, it doesn't matter if it's marijuana or psilocybin or MDMA or anything like this. It opens up these pathways that just otherwise simply are not on.
Yeah,
They simply are not on. And then you get to access these other parts of yourselves and really transmute some serious stuff.
yeah.
So
I think that's why it's so key, like as you said, discernment, but in ceremony. I think
yeah,
having reverence for the medicine, I do that now, but in ceremonial type ways. It's not just like whoever, like because I know how much energy moves around. Before it was just like with any, I was just very particular. Even if I go somewhere and I do my energetic protection, there, it's a ceremony for,
yes.
so it has that protection, and it's very intentional. Uh, like it's different from like what I was doing in my teenage years, and 20 when I didn't know all that. But now everything is very ceremonial because if you with intention, especially with plant medicine, you have to really work with facilitators and healers, medicine men and women that are also in integrity.
Mhm.
Like that's so key because you need that safety and that environment, because a lot can you open up you when you open up, you also leave open space for lots of different things to come in, right? Influences, energies, all of that. The more work that you do, the more energetically and emotionally open you are and intuitive, so you have to be so much more protective and discerning of your energy.
Yeah, that's a really good piece, actually. What do you feel like would support our listeners? Because now that we've opened up that can of worms, what do you feel like would support our listeners in just some nuggets that they can really take away of what to look for? Because there's tons of people that are like, "Oh, come do ayahuasca for a day and then goodbye." And then there's people like for me, when I did ayahuasca ceremony, the woman, she had a pretty in-depth process to even have me say yes. And there was a whole month prep, and then there was a 2 month integration period. And the whole thing was like a week long, and it was 3 different times. We did a cleanse beforehand. It was this whole thing. So, what do you feel like people should really look for in actually seeing these experiences? Because maybe not everybody has. I mean, that ayahuasca retreat that I did, it was quite a lot. It wasn't, people typically don't really have financial access to be able to drop that kind of money on a retreat like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of
I
people are going through these things that are like, okay, let's do ayahuasca for this one night, and then they're kind of hoping for the best. But I don't know, any guidance for our listeners would be amazing.
Yeah, so I've done both the long retreat setting and the night. I think what's important is one, to do your research on whatever the medicine is.
Mhm.
Like two, to really also learn more about the facilitator, really feel out their energy, discernment, and find out if they need to have a process. If someone is just saying, "Oh yeah, let's do it," and then like don't ask you any questions, there's no onboarding, there's no like that's a red flag, because you don't know if someone's on SSRIs, like what their history is, what they're like. The right facilitators, shamans, medicine women who like are integrity, they want to know all those things. There is a dieta, there is a process beforehand. It is not for everyone. There's people who like just jump into it and have gone through spiritual psychosis, because of that, because like that's a real thing. So and I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just saying like practice discernment, because you are so open that like the process of knowing someone, will someone actually care for you before the medicine is served and after. Integration also is so important. You know, I've seen a lot of people who, you know, it's that addiction mentality. They're like, oh, I stopped drinking or doing drugs, but I've done like 30 ayahuasca ceremonies. I'm like, do you hear yourself? Like the whole point isn't to just like get for that hit again. Oh, like the point is to take whatever Mother Ayahuasca is giving and integrate it in life. You don't need to do, unless you're a facilitator, because they do, you know, when you're a shaman, when medicine woman that actually serves it, you also take it. That's different, but you go through your own training, you go into the jungle, like that's different. But if you're just someone that's like, you know, then you're just doing another, you're just, you know, escapism in another form.
Yeah.
And so it's that, it's like, okay, what's their process? Every time I've done a journey with someone who facilitates, they ask, and I love it when they ask. It's not an easy barrier to entry to just take the medicine. I think that's a big thing to look for. They're like, yeah, here you go. And I'm like, no. So what they did, but you can also have it condensed. They may not be like a week-long retreat in the jungles, but like if they do one night, do they still have like learn about you, talk to you, what's their onboarding process, you know, during and then after.
Yeah,
So.
beautiful. Yeah, I feel that integration for me is almost more important than the ceremony, you know? Because you receive so much, but really you do have to, there's so much to integrate within that. And if you do jump from one to another, you don't really, there's so many of those things take so much time to integrate, you know? So yeah, people getting the intake forms, getting asked the questions, and people taking in the time and supporting them with the integration is what I'm hearing. How does this connect to your experience as a former dominatrix? I'm really curious. How does this connect to your journey of being a professional dominatrix? Did this connect with your journey of the use of psychedelics? I mean, I imagine it connects with the whole journey of psychedelics, of the somatic healing, of the sexual healing. I'm really curious to hear this part of your journey.
So I didn't talk about this actually until maybe it was like 4 years ago, because I did hold a lot of shame around that, right? Because this was pre-near-death experience.
Mm.
It was before. But as I was doing even deeper healing and coming back, doing more somatic body work, I realized how tied in it was actually. And I was like, everything is connected. Everything is connected, you know? And it was just this, and let go of the shame and started talking about it. And it's just like, wow. And it's just like these full circle moments, right? So it's an interesting story how I got into it. So my background is in marketing, and I did a freelance marketing, and I answered this ad. It was on Craigslist. They were looking for a marketer to help them with like their SEO website, all that kind of stuff. And they were like, you know, what we do is a little bit like different. And I was just curious about the ad. And so I answered it, and I went into an in-person interview, and they're like, we're a dungeon, all this, like, and I was like, interesting. And we talked about like what they wanted to do. And they were like, you know, Asian dominatrices are in high demand. And one, I'm the type that if like just something interests me, I've always actually been interested in BDSM, kind of all of that stuff. Even before I didn't like dive into that world yet, but like I'd heard about, I was always curious. And I always follow my curiosities. I've just always been, I'm like, let me just try it. If I don't like it, I can be like, oh yeah, try it. I've always been like that type of person. So that sparked my interest. And I was like, huh, okay. And they're like, we'll train you. You can shadow one, you can work here. We can give you clients, all that stuff. I was like, sure. And I can learn more about it. And so that's how it started. It was just so interesting. But this was before my spiritual awakening. So a part of me actually really I went through a lot of abuse from men. And so at that time of my life, this was 12, 13 years ago, I hadn't healed that. And I was like, this is my chance to like dominate, get even, right?
Mm.
Like, put back what they like did to me. And so it came from that place. And like this power over, right? But interestingly enough, what it taught me was more compassion for men, because a lot of the clients like we saw, and I didn't like put this together until after, like, wow, that it was healing for them and for me. Because yes, I did all the things, but I realized like all of these men had no one to like talk to, see them. You were like a therapist. Oftentimes they like would break down more if you just like touch them or gave them a hug after or listen to them. People think it's all these things that like, pain and whipping, yes, but oftentimes there's a story underneath it all of why. There's trauma underneath it all. There's always something. And when you are in a power position, it heightened my nonverbal communication skills. Like you have to be fully aware, right? Because someone can be gagged or tight, like nuances. Like I actually truly believe that it helped me with my intuitive psychic abilities, because you have to really be aware of your senses, little things, here and there, movements. You're very on. It's actually, people don't realize, like it can be tiring. You have to be like your energy, right? When you hold a space like that, especially when there's pain involved, there's a lot of emotions, like it can take a lot out of you. And for me, it did, because I didn't know how to protect my energy yet, cleansing, all of that kind of stuff. I didn't have those practices. But it taught me, like, I just ended up having more compassion I'm like, wow, no one really listens. No one really like, there's a lot of shame around it. There's all these things. At the end of the day, there's a lot of trauma underneath. They cry because I was actually there to listen. I would like actually listen to them in the aftercare part or things like that. And it was that changed like how I viewed things. So, I ended up not working at the dungeon for like super, super long, because I was just burning the candle at both ends, because it's like the night shift. So I was still working the marketing stuff, and then I would go there late at night and I would barely get any sleep, and it just like took a toll on me. So after shadowing, doing my own things, I freelanced after here and there, and then was in the BDSM kink world, in and out. And so I still take a lot of the concepts, from it. And now with what I know, practicing conscious kink with my partner, it's interesting when people are like, oh, so are you dominating? I'm like, no, I'm collared. And so I'm like the sub. But it's beautiful because it's been like, he's the only person that I've ever felt safe with to surrender. So it was just beautiful. Like now I'm like, wow, that taught me so much. That taught me so much about myself, about intuitive abilities, about really gave me more compassion for men. And it changed the dynamic of how I saw like the little boy in all of them before I had the language for it, right? And then as I was doing my healing, and I still took some freelance clients here and there, like when I was already on my journey, it changed how I was able to hold space for them, knowing that there was a lot of things underneath. So it all ties in. I think I'm a much more in tune healer, coach, a leader because of that experience. I understand power dynamics. I understand holding and it's so much more powerful actually. You don't need, people think of dominance, they think of like outward aggressiveness. Actually, stillness, presence is powerful. And you can feel someone's energy more than if someone was like barking orders or doing much. And it's really like this embodiment. So yeah, I've learned it's been such a huge part. And now seeing the full circle, because our sexual energy is life force energy for women, like, like it, and that was what was taken away. So it's no surprise to me that I got into, that work, sex work, all of that, because of all the sexual healing that I had to do, because my power was taken away. And BDSM gave me the power back with consent, with, you know, being able to have those parameters to take my power back. So it's been part of my healing journey.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you would feel comfortable in that role again, even if it was like with your partner, or you feel like that part of you feels complete?
It feels more complete. Like sometimes, you know, I actually take it out when it's funny. I have like analogies, right? In my when I remind myself of my power, when I'm going into meetings, let's say with corporations, with like execs, a lot of them male environments, or I'm giving a talk. When I start feeling these like, oh, who am I? In my head, I'm like, you know, you remind me of the clients that I used to dom. You know, like because a lot are these like super successful, really rich men, like in power positions, and they also wanted to surrender, let go. And I remember that, and I'm like, I like channel my goddess mistress energy, and I just remember, and the energy shifts. So I still use that. Like it's still in me. In my business, I like can channel that, right? When I hold space, like it's always a part of me. Uh, and yeah, in my relationship dynamics, I love to be more of the sub, but like we have a very, it's not the traditional um DS type of relationship. You know, it's more of kind of like the flow of our life. And
Mhm.
and it's more like just knowing that I can like let go of a lot of things that I used to want to control. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
love
I'm
it.
still that's a part of me that I could still turn on when I need it, especially when I'm forward facing with other powerful people, decision makers. In my head, I'm like, oh yeah, you're someone that I could, yeah, that would have been tied up in my dungeon.
Yes. Oh my gosh, talking about this makes me like, I don't know, I feel like I'm at this space where I'm really starting to normalize it because I honestly feel like I wish that it was something that we could really have normalized, right? Like me doing yoni massages, receiving yoni massages is like that was a huge thing for me to break through. And now that it's a part of my life, I've had deep healing with that beautiful presence and opening in that space. And I'm like, fuck, I wish that this was just normalized. I wish that people weren't like, oh my God, I can't believe you would have, you know, a stranger or whatever. Not he's not a stranger anymore because he's my regular practitioner, but you know, I wish that these kinds of things were normalized. And you're making me think about this even for being a dominatrix, because I shared with you that
Mhm.
my favorite shisha place, it literally has the Isis goddess on the freaking table. And it's like my favorite place in Paris. And I'm like, two times I've been asked, two times I've been asked of men that want to pay me to be their mistress. And
Mhm.
the last one, I'll share this with you because I'm curious your thoughts on it. The last one, you know, he told me that he was watching me and he couldn't he to get the courage to talk to me, he was drinking. And so I sent him a message, you know, after I reflected on it and considering it. And I was like, if we ever have this exchange,
Mhm.
you will not drink because for me like this is a such a sacred transformation. It's a ritual, it's like it's an activation, it's an initiation, you know. And I get where he's coming from. I mean, so many people use alcohol as a social lubricant for so many things, right? But for me, I just feel like alcohol just shouldn't even be a part of it. However, I haven't actually really stepped in and said yes to any of these engagements yet because I still feel like there's a big part of me that feels like it's the courage for me to do it. But even more like hearing you talk about this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I see these parts of me that I just need to fucking own in my power, and that the universe is just like, hello, hello. And I want to make sure that I do it from integrity. I don't want to do it from a anger towards men and things like this, right? Because I have also had sexual trauma, and you know, as much as I've worked through a lot of it, I'm no, I'm still on the journey. So I want to make sure that it comes from a whole place. So I guess if you were to do it again, or if you were to give advice to me or anyone who's listening who's like curious to explore this for their own empowerment journey, what are some nuances and advice you'd have for somebody looking to step into that?
Yeah. So a big thing in that type of relationship is one, you need to be clear with yourself. So there's something called hard limits, soft limits. So basically like your boundaries. So in this container, if you're like no alcohol and that's your hard limit, stay with that. Like don't bet like you're building, it's like a container. I'm gonna akin this to like your boundaries for, let's say, coaching or working with clients. Same thing. You have like, these are my non-negotiables. This is the container. If you were to enter my world, this is the, like, so get clear on that with yourself. Because especially from your goddess position, right? I never really used mistress as much. Goddess was always something. And it's so interesting. This was before I did a lot of goddess work, but that's what resonated. I had them call me goddess, and now it just totally makes sense, full circle, right? Is be clear. So hard limits, soft limits. I actually had a client a while back who wanted to integrate some of that. And she's like, I actually don't really want any, like, it's considered sex work because they're sexual, but I don't want to. I'm like, you don't have to do anything sexual. It could be sexual energy. You don't even have to touch them in that way. Like, you create the environment, right? And for what it is that you want. And people what don't realize, they think it's just sexual. You can actually have subs that all they do is like service subs, meaning they'll just clean. There's financial subs, they'll just give you money. Like there's just all these things, like what it is that you desire. How would they be of service to you? And get clear on that.
Love that.
Hard limits, soft limits, and then there's other things, and then you create. It's a relationship, right? Think what people think, like, okay, I'm in the dominant, like it's everything that I say. It's a communication. So you talk to them because, like, what is it that you also desire, in this type of arrangement, in this, in a session, whatever it is. Is this like an ongoing thing? Like what's the also the parameters for your energy exchange? What is it? You're going to have an energy exchange because it is an energy exchange. And to hold space as the dom, it's a lot of energy. So yeah.
And then that's so powerful right there. It made me think about this too, because some people want quite extremes, right? Like this one man who particularly was using the words mistreating. And I'm like such a sweetheart. I'm also like not at the same time. So I'm like, how do you actually, I wrote this question down so I can clearly ask this one. How do you ethically play with humiliation or degradation in a way that doesn't cross into harm? Like how do you, that part I feel, because I'm like, okay, he says he wants to be mistreated, but I'm like, I don't know, like how, like
Well, that's the conversation that has to be had, right? And knowing your hard limits, right?
yeah.
So because definition of mistreatment varies, right? So someone could be like mistreating me by like just, saying bad things, demeaning me. And then mistreatment for someone else could be like, whipping them. Another for someone else. For me, a hard limit was knives, blood, child, like BC, like all these things, bestiality, anything minor, like no, nothing of that nature. I found out through personal experience, scat was after I had that, like for 2, I'm like, that's just kind of not a thing that I would do. So you find out too, like through your own experience,
Right.
and you find out like what that is. And also if they're new to exploring it, that definition, like, you can try new things. For example, humiliation and mistreatment can be, I remember this, and some, like, I'm like, I think of this fondly because that was just really fun for me. It was in Miami and really at like in public wanted to be my servant. So I was like dressed up, looking fabulous, went to a public place cafe, and he was just kneeling. in front of me and like paid for everything, all this kind of stuff. And and that was like mistreatment for him, like humiliation, like I'm here to serve you, like I'm kneeling before you as a goddess. So like it varies, right? And then there was times in the dungeon when it was like just a lot of pain, that type. I had a sub before that like wanted to be treated like a dog and like locked in a cage, you know, yeah, and be like, talk to them like a bad dog, they eat from the floor. Like there's just, it's such a range. I think the communication part is key.
I guess this is where I feel with it is like, I get the communication part is key, and some people want that. But I'm also like, will it still cause harm? Am I contributing to a psychological problem? That's where I'm actually like, I can see where it's healing. So I guess this can also go into the question of like, how is that conducive to somebody's growth, you know?
Mhm. Well, if it's growth that they're looking for, what if it's just release that they're looking for? It
Mm.
depends. Like it's hard for me to say because it's so individualized, right? And it's a conversation that has to happen. Like if you were to tell me, and we don't have to do this here, like, okay, I'm talking to him, like you can give me specific examples, I can answer, but there's no like one answer fits all type thing because it's such individualized work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes
So
sense. That
mhm.
makes sense. Okay, well, girl, I feel like I can talk to you about so many different topics. We went the full range of near-death experience to psychedelics, somatic healing to dominatrix. I do actually have another question that kind of like wraps some of this up. What advice would you give to women who are afraid to be too much, like the too sexual, too loud, too commanding in both business and in life? Because the listeners of the show, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, right? But a lot of them are just like really craving the being radiantly, fully unleashed and expressed. So, what advice do you have for that woman?
Yeah, is to continue doing the somatic release and healing and nervous system recalibration to continue to share more and more. Like at one point in my journey, that was the limits of my too muchness, right? So we have our too much, now is can be really way too much for someone, where they were, right? So at every level, it's just continuous too much, like going smaller, like taking these steps of like opening up ourselves more, and we're all at different parts of our journey. So at one point, I was like, I really felt called to share more sensual photos and doing things like that years ago. Now, I just really don't feel called to do that as much. I think I love it when I see other women do it. I'm like, that is amazing. Now, my too muchness, what I feel, it's not really, I don't really think it's too much. It's just like sharing my story, like unapologetically, owning all the parts of myself and sharing it like right here. Like, yeah, I was a dom. Yeah, I like had a near death experience. Yeah, I had, addictions. Yeah, like owning that without the shame. Like, so whatever it is that you're too much of, lean into that. And when you feel that like resistance, that's when you do the tools of like, okay, I need to release this. I need to recalibrate to the version that is comfortable saying or being this. And then continuing, it's like the expansion. It's a muscle. It's a muscle, just like our intuition, just like when you go to the gym, it's a muscle. We need to like stretch our too muchness muscle.
I love it. The too muchness not muscle. That's a
Yeah.
really beautiful and grounded way that you just shared that. Because what I'm also hearing from that is that you don't have to do it all at the same time or all at once. And maybe what felt too much for you at one point is just, like you were talking about with the sensual content and things like this. Maybe that's where someone's at in their journey. And if it doesn't feel called to you, it doesn't mean that you've lost your edge or whatever. There's probably another area for you. And even if the area might be something like dominatrix or something like this, it's like to never shame those parts of you and to just like honor that part of your journey. And if you've got like this resistance to it, to lean in. That is just such beautiful advice because I know for my journey, there was a point in my journey where I would watch burlesque dancers and shame them so much and judge them so much. Like, oh my God, how can she degrade herself like that? Because I just felt so much insecurity. And I loved doing burlesque. And around this time of my life, I'm kind of like, it's not as much of a draw to me. I'm not saying that I'll never do it again, but I feel like there was a point where I felt like I had to be so extra everywhere. But I was hearing earlier when you were telling your story that it wasn't coming from a whole place. You were not being out there in a conscious way. So I think what you just gave as advice is a beautiful way to really kind of ground it holistically of your too much muscle, just like all the muscles in our bodies. If you just overwork your legs all day, your legs are going to be completely out of balance with everything else, right? So, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for this really potent conversation. Is there anything else that you feel like you would like to share with our audience? Is there anywhere that they can find you? Do you have any offers, anything like this? Because I can make sure that I drop it in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So depending on when this comes out, they can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn if they're also in like corporate and in that environments. But Instagram, I have my podcast, the Thriver Lifestyle Podcast, and they can join my free Telegram channel. I drop daily voice notes there, just on everything that just like flows through me. And if I'm teaching a masterclass on the embodied Empress way, on really, yeah, like owning your embodiment so that you have like a feminine, like all the shifts. I'm actually sharing all the energetic, operational and systematic changes and shifts I've made in my business to be feminine energy led instead of like the hustle, like masculine way. And so that masterclass is on the 23rd, Friday, next week, a week from now.
Amazing. Well, that's perfect. So I'm going to launch this episode on Monday, so it'll be perfect. So make sure to send me that link and I'll pop it in the show notes. I love that you're doing that because the castle coronation ceremony that we did, it was themed of the Empress.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So that's just on point. We did this whole coronation ceremony. It was on Empress Day, and that was the whole essence of it for women to really embody that emotional fulfillment aspect of business and to really recognize where they've been sold this more masculine patriarchal way of creating and structuring our vision. It's like the structure is so important, but it's to actually hold the overflow that gets to happen. So that's so beautiful. Oh, yay. Thank you so much, love. And thank you, everybody, for listening. If this episode resonated with you, any kind of little snippet that you were like, wow, this was juicy, this was exactly what I needed to hear, you can message me at The Rich Witch Prophet. The link is also in the show notes below. You could tag either of us. Make sure you send us a message, send Marian a message if something resonated with you with what she shared. Thank you so much, love. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you soon. Okay, I trust that this message landed for you, Empress, Queen, Goddess, Witch, at the right time, in the right place, and in the right way. Again, make sure you leave a review, 5 stars, if it feels resonant for you. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you what resonated with you in this episode over on Instagram at The Rich Witch Prophet. You can check out the free masterclass, Liquid Legacy, to learn how women all around the globe are getting paid to be in their unique, authentic magnetism in collaboration with water witches around the world. I'll see you soon.